In 1994, Dante Sharp was convicted of murdering George Radcliffe. In 2018, after 24 years in prison, the state's only eyewitness recanted her testimony, and the former state medical examiner disproved the prosecution's theory. Dante was thus released. He always maintained his innocence, and when he was offered numerous opportunities to reduce his sentence with a guilty plea, he steadfastly refused, because he was innocent, and that was all there was to it. Can you imagine spending 24 years in prison for something you did not do? Certainly his world collapsed around him when he was convicted for doing nothing wrong. One has to wonder if he felt much like Habakkuk in our first reading. Habakkuk's world also collapsed around him, and he wrestled with a question that I wonder if Dante Sharp wrestled with. And the question is, if God is good and God is in control, why does this happen? You see, as we know the story of Habakkuk, he had sleepless nights, loss of appetite, unbelievable depression and discouragement. He was looking at a world that was collapsing around him, a world unbelievably like the one perhaps we're living in right now, where it seems like everything not nailed down is coming apart, where it seems like the bad guys win a lot more than the good guys, and where the naughty and the nasty seem to always get victory over the neat and the nice. When Dante Sharp was asked how he survived those 24 years and why he never went for the reduced sentence, he stated, "It's because of my faith and my family." I don't know how long it took him to come to that kind of depth of faith. I wonder how much he questioned God. But somehow his faith was strong enough that he did leave prison without being a bitter man. I kind of wonder if he didn't hear Paul's challenge to Timothy in that second reading where he said, "Bear your share of hardship with the strength that comes from God." Certainly, it's only the strength that comes from God that could get anyone through 24 years of prison. The apostles in our gospel today shout to Jesus, "Increase our faith." And he tells them that they need only the faith the size of a mustard seed to do amazing things. It seems that Dante Sharp had the faith at least the size of a mustard seed. I imagine that most of us at different times in our lives have had those sleepless nights, the loss of appetite, depression, discouragement, the same kinds of things that Habakkuk experienced. Because life always challenges us, no matter who we are. And this often leads us at times to question, to wonder, to doubt, to want to walk away. This is a normal part of the struggling believer. Well, this weekend, I believe the scriptures ask us to reflect upon our faith. The Franciscan theologian Richard Rohr tells us that faith in today's world is really quite rare, that cultural faith and civil religion tend to define faith poorly and narrowly as having certitudes, being able to hold religious formulas. But he goes on to say that's often an excuse for not having faith. And Rohr tells us that faith is having the security to be insecure. The security to live in another identity other than our own and to find our value and our significance in that larger union, that bigger picture. And maybe that's why faith is so rare in our culture today. And many people substitute it with a very, very nice, sweet religion. See, faith isn't having answers. Just look at Job and Habakkuk. After tremendous discouragement and depression, they are willing to surrender and wait in that space of non-answer. And it's in that space of non-answer where God creates faith. Somehow, and it's certainly amazing to me, Dante Sharp was able to wait in that space of non-answer. There's a great quote from a woman who died in Auschwitz. She left diaries. Her name was Etty Hillesum. And when her diaries were found, there was one quote that stood out. And she wrote, "I know that this too is part of life, and somewhere there is something inside me that will never desert me again." In his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, Rabbi Harold Kushner dispels that common myth about suffering, and he helps us understand our way through intense pain. He talks about that conventional explanation that God sends us the burden because God knows that we are strong enough to handle it. Well, that's not the case. He goes on to say it's fate that sends us the problem. And when we try to deal with this at times, we find out at times that we're not strong, that we're weak, and we get tired, and we get angry, and we get overwhelmed. But when we reach the limits of our own strength and courage, something very unexpected happens. We do find reinforcement coming from a source outside ourselves. And in the knowledge that we are not alone, that God is on our side, we can manage, and often do manage, to go on, to keep going. I'm sure that every one of us at times have faced very challenging, scary, difficult situations, and we've prayed for help and discovered that the help we wanted didn't happen in the way we wanted it to happen. But we also discovered at those times that we were a lot stronger and a lot better able to handle the challenge better than we ever thought we could. And at times in our desperation, we certainly opened our hearts to prayer. And what happened? We didn't get a miracle that would avert the tragedy, but we discovered people around us, and God beside us, and strength within us. When life challenges us, as it often does, like Job and Habakkuk and Dante Sharp and Etty Hillesum, it is so very easy to lose one's faith. It's so simple to become an atheist, an agnostic, to be so angry with this God we do not understand, and to run away and stay away and cop out. It happens to many people. But there are such amazing examples of people who really do understand what faith truly is, and who are examples to all of us. When we falter, when we wonder, when we question, when we doubt, when we want to walk away and stay away. Job and Habakkuk, Dante Sharp and Etty Hillesum, they had something deep inside themselves that they were able to be secure with insecurity. They had to come to, and we all have to come to, the realization that faith is not about certitudes, and it's not about having answers. They had to come to that ability which we have to come to live in that space of non-answer. Because that's where God's grace is found, and that's where faith is discovered. A grace and a faith that often does not change the immensity of the pain that we go through, but it does give us the strength to survive it without bitterness. So perhaps as the apostles asked Jesus in the gospel to increase their faith, Perhaps this weekend we each need to ask for the right kind of faith and the grace to live secure with insecurity in that space of non-answer. Maybe we need to ask for the grace to believe like that woman who died in Auschwitz believed when she wrote in her diary, "I know that this too is part of life, and somewhere there is something inside me that will never desert me again." She didn't find any answers, but she did find God.